Sorry about that. I had the loop on. Welcome in, Bucs fans. We are live. Welcome to Real Bucs Talk here on a Thursday night special edition. I have my good friend Ken Barrett joining me from Buck What You Heard, and I think we just wanted to get together and talk about this team and obviously what is happening with them as far as we currently stand at 4-6, and what is the expectations moving forward. But with that said, Ken, it's good to have you on. And how are we doing?
Man, we're doing better than the Bucs defense, but maybe not quite as good. I've been sick a little bit, so not as good as probably the Bucs offense, even without Godwin and Evans.
Mhm.
I mean, they're getting in the 20s. I don't know what more we can really ask, but I think right now is a good time to really just do an assessment of what the past months look like and what the next 6 weeks are going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at this team, obviously it was a very similar start from in comparison to last year. They start 3-1, get off to a 4-2 start. And unfortunately, after that 3-1 start, you had some key injuries. Obviously, the loss of Servassier Dennis, and then the expected Jamel Dean injury. But I think the bigger injuries, like all their insurances, kind of got hurt as well. With Bryce Hall going out the first game, that was a big loss. And then obviously, you have Antoine Winfield go down. You have Kalijah Cansey out for the first ever so months or so, whatever, however long it was. So obviously that plays a part. I think also you have to look into it. We didn't expect, at least I didn't. I didn't expect KJ Britt to be as bad as he has been. I thought he would have been at least serviceable, but it just hasn't worked out. And then Levante David, you kind of see a little bit of regression going on there. But I think people forget, like, he's being asked to do a different job than he has done in the past. They're using him as a blitzer more often than not. Um, and that really wasn't his game. That was Devin White's responsibility. So yeah, just let's talk about that and just our thoughts overall as far as obviously the hot start, and then it kind of just tailed off over the last month or so.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you're looking at the season from that macro 1,000-foot view and
Mhm.
you see, hey, took the Chiefs to overtime, lost two one-score games to the Falcons. You look at the 10 point within 10 points with the Ravens, 49ers,
Mhm.
one score. Like if you told a lot of Bucs fans that they'd be competitive, especially with those teams not named the Falcons in that stretch, I think fans would be happy.
Mhm.
Um, at the end of the day, it just really comes down to what happened in those two Falcons games.
Yeah.
And that's just the disappointing part. Um, I mean, the first one, I think was definitely the heartbreaker. Granted, it was on the road, but um, they had it. They had the interception with under or right around 2 minutes left.
Mhm.
Bucky has the fumble. Then we get the ball back and aren't get pushed out of field goal range, so punt it off. Game tying field goal. You know the story. That one hurt a lot. Um, but it's just like for me, what I really struggle with is how every team, except for maybe the 49ers, I think they were trying to force feed McCaffrey to get his work made up for the season. But
Mhm.
everyone else seems to just have their best offensive game against us, or if not best, top two, worst case, top three.
Right.
Except maybe Detroit, but even then, we know Detroit was moving the ball and they, just couldn't capitalize. And hats off to the defense for stepping up in that game. But if you look at really all of the games, I mean, when was the last time New Orleans scored 27?
Mhm.
Baltimore's defense is giving up 30 to a lot of teams. So hats off to the offense. But look at that, in that stretch, 26. I mean, we're not other than the Lions, every team is putting up a lot of points.
Mhm.
Bowles has made his name in terms of just getting teams to settle for three. They're not doing that. They're getting yards out the wazoo.
Right.
The offense is able to chew. It's not like we have Jameis and the ball's getting turned over.
Mhm.
It, it's like the defense doesn't have the excuse of like, hey, you're not getting rested. That's what stinks. they
Mhm.
have the opportunities. They've had the opportunities, and they're going to continue getting the opportunities because the offense is going to, until Mike's really healthy, going to probably stay in that low 20s, mid 20s range. Like it's really hard to have those breakout games without your star players. And I just hope Bowles can figure something out. We got Mike Edwards coming back, but
Mhm.
really it's just like the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. We're just giving up way too many points, and there's not just like that one game that's like, okay, we put it together. It's just like it's the same things over and over and over again, and teams exploiting the same things and same things over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, the Buccaneers claimed Mike Edwards today. They got him back. They let go Keenan Isaac. So obviously you get a familiar face. Hopefully that allows the Buccaneers to do, more dime packages. That is something that I think they have to go towards, especially answering the middle of the field defensive problem. Put more safeties in with Levante David to cover the middle of the field, or even take out both linebackers if you have to. Like, it's time to really make that an emphasis to make it better overall, because right now it's just not working. And like you said, I think losing losing to the Falcons, I think, those two games right there, those were, I think, the backbreaker, as far as what the mood is for this team currently, because you win at least one of those, you're probably feeling a lot better. You still have a chance in the division if you win one of them. Um, and you kind of control more so of your destiny. Now you need Atlanta probably to lose some games to, have a chance at that division. And hopefully you can go on a run here, because like I said earlier today and on my channel, like, this is no excuses not to be 6-1 or better down the stretch here. But right now, this team at 4-6, it's kind of been just an up and down season with, its offense has been, for the most part, pretty consistent. There's been some inconsistencies with turnovers and such, but I think that's been cleaned up over the last couple of weeks. But defensively, it's kind of been the same issues all year, where they can't really can't get off the field, or they can't get the key stops when they need to, and that has been a problem. But now going into this next game, they don't have any excuses, because you're going to have Jamel Dean back, going to have pretty much a healthy secondary. The only weakness on the team is probably KJ Britt, and I think they're trying to figure out a way to utilize him less and probably go in a different direction with the move of Mike Edwards. So yeah, there really is no excuses moving forward. Your team's pretty much going to be healthy. You're going to have Mike Evans back next week, I believe. So it's time to, make things happen.
Yeah. The Giants pose a really strong defensive front.
Yep.
So that's going to be the uphill battle. But thankfully, the offensive line for the past probably even really since the Lions game,
Hmm.
I feel like has been superb.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Jones was barely heard from in the Kansas City game.
Mm.
Nick Bosa had like 2 pressures, 1 sack, both of which that came after Tristan Wirfs got hurt.
Right.
Gadecki took him about a game or two to kind of get his stride back, but he's been solid since.
Mm.
Mock has taken the next step probably in his development. I mean, he's not there yet, but he's made that improvement that's been super valuable. And Bredesen's just been that, hey, he's not a problem. So I think with the Giants, it's really encouraging, but both teams coming off a bye.
Yeah.
Hey, so it's not like, hey, one team's, not going to be prepared. I mean, the Giants are still playing for their season. Daboll's job's not necessarily as safe now as I guess it was like a week ago. They
Mm.
just lost to the Panthers in London, or
Yeah.
Germany, so that's just backbreaker for him. We know what Daniel Jones can be against the Bucs. So Bucs fans are already having PTSD. So it's not like, hey, we were talking before this podcast came on. It was, hey, like 5-2 has to be the floor. And we
Mm.
now know the Panthers aren't a gimme. even last year when they sucked, both of those games together, they were combined what, like 15 points in the
Mhm.
losses for the Panthers. They're better than they were last year.
Yeah.
Dallas knows bowls, uh,
Mhm.
so there's some storylines and stuff there. The Saints, granted, Koo missed 3 kicks, but hey, they beat the Falcons. We couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Um, so, like, again, it's not like any of these teams are going to be cakewalks by any means.
Yeah.
But yes, statistically, the Bucs have the easiest schedule left in the NFL, and if Bowles isn't at least 5-2, I think his job's on the line. Just because you've seen what the offense can do with limited resources, but even more importantly, when I've been speaking about the development of players, let's talk about who the tight ends coach that Cohen brought in. K.
Mhm.
Dot's a different player.
Yeah.
Payne Durham's a better blocker. The offensive line is all improved. Even Tristan, I think he's taken a step from what he was at left tackle last year.
Yep.
Our receivers, Mike and Chris. Chris was off to the best start of his career.
Mhm.
First or second in literally every offensive receiver statistic. And Mike, was in a new offense and figuring stuff out, but his numbers were okay before he got hurt. It's not like, he was an afterthought.
Yeah.
Uh, the run game struggled, but now we figured out a run game. So it's just like the offense and the coaching staff has found answers, and that gives Cohen leverage. We've seen
Mhm.
what the NFL does. They want to pluck the next offensive guru a year too early. So if Bowles finishes at 8-9 wins, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, he did win us a Super Bowl 4 years ago. But is he the guy to win us our next one? And even if he doesn't go 5-2, 6-1, I still don't think he's the guy. But if he doesn't, if he doesn't get those wins, it's bulletin board material for the last 2 weeks of the season. If we lose that second or third game, like that's going to be the storyline.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think this team, like I said before we started, like it has to go 6-1 or better to even have a remote chance at the playoffs. I think if you finish 9-8, you're pretty much out. You're not going to make it this time around because of those said losses to the Falcons. So it's just, yeah, they know what's on the line. They have to figure things out and get it done. As far as Todd Bowles goes, I mean, I can understand if he does get another year, but I can also see it where it's like, we've already seen this story so many times already. It's like, okay, are we just 9-8 and that's what we're hoping for, moving forward? I think this roster is a lot better than 9-8. And if we keep underachieving like we have been, in my opinion, like that's not where you want to go. And also give yourself an opportunity to potentially lose Liam Cohen. I think that would be a big mistake by the Bucs. And like you said, you looking at the offensive staff as a whole, you look at who Liam has brought in and this whole coaching staff on offense, pretty much everyone on offense got better. I mean, development wise, the usage of the new scheme, players have improved. K. Dotton is making me look right again. Like,
Yeah,
it's
he
all.
is.
So, I mean, when you look at that, you look at all the positions, the running back room has gotten better. Rashad White looks like a real legit running back. Same with Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker. We haven't really seen much. Hopefully, that is the adjustment they make in the second half of the season where he gets more touches. But the offensive line has been outstanding. I think Baker Mayfield, for the most part, has been pretty good. There's some things he obviously wants to clean up too. I think that's probably the next step in this second half of the season where he's got to find that balance where he can be aggressive, but also be smart and avoid the turnovers. That's going to be, can he take that step? Because right now there's some things, and I'll pull it up on the screen. Let's see. No, it's not
And
that one.
while you're pulling that up,
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield hasn't played perfect football by any means. And
Right.
if you're subscribed to John Ledyard's Substack, you probably have heard Josh Capo and him talk about specifically kind of what's going on. But again, when they need a drive, they're getting scores. Like he's not playing perfect football, but we still have chances to win. There you go.
Right.
You got the clip up.
Yeah, I was just pointing this out. You can see Kate Otten here open at the top of the screen, like, and again, he's already thrown the football away. He's taking the underneath route, which is smart. That's playing smart football. You're getting, you're taking yards, but you're also leaving potential for more, potentially a touchdown or at least a big play. And that was really the difference in that last week's game where the Buccaneers just couldn't get explosives, and that really hurt them as far as getting more scoring opportunities. But yeah, that was just a play that you know, brought up. Obviously it was something that occurred throughout the game where Baker, again, he's making what he thinks is the safe play, but sometimes you just got to let those rip, especially when they're open like that.
Yeah, and I've been King Baker needs to check down more, but like
Mhm.
you said, it's a balance. I mean, I can understand where Baker's coming from. Where like, hey, these might not be my best weapons, especially downfield. But who's been the number one weapon? It's Kate Otten, and that's the guy
Mm,
who's kind of screaming down the sideline there.
right.
He's probably not going in for a touchdown, but that's an explosive. That's what probably if you want to nitpick the offense, that's what's not there is explosives in the pass game at least.
Yeah.
But again, they're doing enough. We know that they're basically playing on one leg. And when we're talking about like Bowles for his job, I just want the caveat to be like, hey, everyone, it's not because they're going to go hire someone else externally.
Right.
The only person who could take Todd's job is Liam Cohen. And I think where a lot of fans, including myself, it's just like there's a process. And I think we all were frustrated with Dave's process last year. This year, they're making adjustments.
Mhm.
We have the run game. We have pony personnel. We have Cade Otten, a featured wide receiver one. Like Canales probably wasn't going to make that type of adjustment. Bucky Irving was already talented, but they're using him and I think Rashad White to the best of usage that they possibly can be. And then
Yep.
we now know what Sean Tucker's capable of. So,
Mhm.
like, again, we've seen this development from all of these players, but then you look at the defense, who's
Yep.
taking that next step? Because it isn't Yaya. Yaya's getting pressure, so I'll give him like the even keel pass, like whatever.
Mhm.
JTS hasn't progressed.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Logan
mean,
Paul may be maybe the most progressive person on the defense.
I'll bring this up as well. It talks about the pass rush. Just a lot of errors, especially on all three levels of the defense, and I think that's where the biggest, I guess, knock for Todd Bowles, because it is his unit. Like, he's in control of that side. And I think it's not just him, but it's his staff, his defensive staff, that is letting him down, because it continues to show up. Guys just not making plays that usually they do make, and it's just not happening. Little things like containing the pocket, like John points out here. Um, you know, Pass rush and games and like certain techniques that shouldn't be failing them, but they are. And that's a big problem that hopefully can get cleaned up. But right now, just the attention to detail on the defensive side of the ball is clearly missing. And when you look at and you compare that to the offensive side of the ball, where they're doing most of the details right, yeah, they might be missing a play here or there, but for the most part, they're making the right plays and finding ways to put up points, like you said, despite not having a large production missing and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And, hopefully with Mike Evans returning, you can see that production go up even more, because Kate Otten's not going to be, double teamed or whatever, like he was over the last couple of weeks where he's taken out. Now you can't really do that. So we'll just see. I know defense and offense is different, because one is reactionary, the other you can kind of be more aggressive to what you want to call. But yeah, still, it's not a good sign when these type of details are just continuing to be missed.
Yeah, and I try to not be too hard on the defensive line because defense, I mean,
Yeah.
is conducive on both the pass rush and the coverage. And
Right.
I think really for the past month, really since Dean been down, it's been one side of the field and then the middle of the field that have
Yes.
been the biggest issues. It's not Zion's side. Zion teams are making one or two shot plays against him and kind of just like staying away. The 49ers probably challenged him a little bit more than the Chiefs or the Falcons did, for instance. But
Mhm.
really, I mean, Josh Hayes is not it. I put that on Bowles where like that we saw him struggle in the preseason
Mhm.
against guys who are no longer in the league. So what makes you think, leaving him one on one with Nuke Hopkins is inside the 3 yard line is a grand idea because we saw how that worked out. But what really struggles or what really concerns me is when I was listening to Rick Stroud, who's obviously has insight into the locker room and everything that's going on. He's pointing out that, like, for instance, in the last game, like these corners, even after Zion was taken out for the
Mhm.
injury, they were told to play man. Like that was their coverage,
Yeah.
and the corners still chose to play 10 yards off.
Yeah.
Like that. That's again, that's a systematic error. Um, and then again, I mentioned Hayes on Hopkins with no help, and Stroud from his insight has basically found out, hey, like from Bowles, like these guys have an assignment; they're supposed to do their assignment, but you're not putting Josh Hayes in the best possible situation.
Right.
You're not putting KJ Britt in the best of situations. It's like Devin White. Devin White, and I think the Houston Texans are figuring this out. The Eagles clearly didn't figure it out.
Mhm.
Devin White is a one-trick pony. You tell Devin White to go downhill. You form your scheme to make sure he goes downhill, and then
Right.
you fill in the gaps around it. So when you're matching your blitzes to your coverage, in the past when you have Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, who could probably, yeah, they did play off a lot, but in times they would come up
Mhm.
and and you were secure that at least for the first 3 seconds, those wide receivers were going to be contained at least for a time being, or at least pushed on their route to be able to slow them up to get to where those open spots would be. But everyone's just having free releases here, for one.
Mhm.
And two, like there's just so much open space on the
Yeah.
left side of the field and in the middle of the field. Like you can blitz Kirk Cousins, but what did we find out? It's even these no-name receivers. They're the first read, balls out. Jawan Jennings, falls out because you're worrying about Deebo Samuel, you're worrying about George Kittle, you're worrying about Kyle Pitts, you're worrying about Drake London, you're worried about the 2 tight ends with the Ravens and Zay Flowers. So
Yeah.
it's the other guys that beat you. It's Rashad Bateman. It's just because the teams are scheming those guys to be their first reads, and they're putting them in places where literally no one is covering the field. And I'm not saying it's, blaming even one guy. It's a system that's the issue.
Mhm.
Like, I think players are part of the problem, but I don't think the defense is being put in situations to succeed.
Yeah.
And if you really take out 2019, I'd say 2019 was a really good year for Bulls considering the 30 interceptions and all the turnovers, because that didn't even include the fumbles with Jameis and others that were thrown
Right.
in there. I think 2019 was great. The second half of 2020 was outstanding. We know that. But really, after that, has the defense been that good? I mean, you have Jordan Whitehead, who's came back after having 2 really good years with the Jets. He
Mhm.
doesn't look like the same player. Antoine's hurt, doesn't look like the same player. Levante Zolder's not the same player. Vita Vea is playing out of his mind. Great. But he's like the only guy, and you're dropping him into coverage some. Like,
Yeah.
and that's again, if my system is telling me that the 1 to 2 consistent players that are providing me pass rush, I'm going to drop them in coverage. It's great and cute when you're, 6-2, winning the division, and no one gives a crap. But when your back's up against the wall, it looks stupid.
Mhm.
And again, Todd Bowles has always done all of these types of things, but we're just naming some really good players that have regressed. That's a
Yeah.
problem. And I think part of it is injury, but part of it is also being put in a position to succeed, because I can tell you that Ravens game was the worst I've ever seen Jordan Whitehead in any uniform. In
Mhm.
Pittsburgh, for UPitt, for the Bucs, for the Jets. I've never seen Jordan Whitehead look that bad. He had no idea where he was supposed to go. I know communications, Todd Bowles' excuse, but for these players, like if Josh Hayes has a miscommunication, whatever. But Jordan Whitehead, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David should not have a miscommunication.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest thing, like you said, with the scheme, I think when Todd Bowles came here, we knew there were certain weaknesses. We saw it during the Super Bowl year. There was weaknesses in the flats. There was weakness up the seams. And that continues to still be the weakness for this defense just based on how the scheme plays. But I think the difference now that it's so glaring and what we're seeing, obviously Jamel Dean's injury is a big part of that because he helps you so much. When you have him and McCollum, you can kind of match up better and do different things. Dean is a very good run defender as well, especially a good tackler in the flats in addition. But the biggest problem where it's so clarifying now is you don't have a strength to this defense, unfortunately. The strength of this defense used to be just shutting down the run no matter what. And now teams are able to run the football at any given time. They're able to get some type of yardage running the football. That used to not be the case. You used to be very stout up front. And now it's just so inconsistent. And the way they play, you have to play kind of zone base because of those weaknesses that we talked about with KJ Britt and, Josh Hayes. Obviously, offenses know where to go with the football. So I think some of that, like you said, is scheme related. Some of it's player related. But right now, yeah, I agree. I think the scheme is just not putting these guys in best position. You have to find ways to disrupt the timing of the offense. And for whatever reason, that's not happening at all. I think when we do rush with 4, I don't think it's been bad. I think it's actually, we've been pretty solid there rushing with 4. I would like to see that more consistently. I would like to see our best players in there more, especially up front, and give them more opportunities. I think JTS is actually having a very underrated season, in my opinion. I think he's been pretty good. Yaya Diaby, same thing. Kalijah Cansey starting
to they have pressures. Yeah. They're not getting sacks, and I think part of that is the coverage.
Yeah,
it's not their performance. Kalijah Cansey has had his moments. Granted, he spent half the year hurt,
right?
But those guys, Logan Hall, all of these guys are playing A-OK. So what are you doing in the coverage? Which that's Bowles' specialty,
right?
What's going on there? That's just what's concerning. Is just this guy is supposed to be the defensive guru, but if he's going to mismanage games the way that he is, I mean, he's a detriment more than he's helping. And we can see he could come out and turn everything around. But even in 2020, if the Vikings kicker did miss 4 kicks, that's a different game. Coming out last year, Bowles seems to play better after the bye. Maybe he just, was on his last leg. He just didn't know what to do. He kept things simple and basic. But the problem with simple and basic is Spags is playing too high cover, or too high man. There's nothing complicated about what Spags does. Todd Bowles just plays off cover 3, cover 4. And you have these issues that we have.
Yeah, you're just inviting yards after yards, and then
if you're not tackling, because that's another thing. You can put that on the players. The players aren't tackling well. Right. So you're giving up yards so easy, and you're not tackling well. I'm just talking about the 49ers game here. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that they were going to get at least 50 yards every single drive. I literally bet on this. I was live betting this on Twitter. 49ers to score points. Just score points. The only 2 times the entire game, because I didn't bet on the first drive that the 49ers punted at halftime, the only 2 that I missed for the entire game were both of Jake Moody's first misses, and I didn't bet on the third one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also it's not a good thing when the opposing team's only punting once the entire game. And
it's the first drive. So that tells me the whole moment they figured something out. And honestly, they had a drop on that first drive too. And then Purdy overshot. I think it was Jennings or Ayuk, one of them over the middle. Right. He was scrambling around and he just threw it too high. But if they catch that drive's still going. Like again, it takes against the Falcons in the first game. It literally took the Falcons to drop passes or commit penalties to not score points.
Yeah. I
That's a
mean,
problem.
yeah, I would love to go back to each game and see, like, how many times did the opposing team punt? And if you look at it, I mean, it's probably not often. You look at, I mean, and Detroit's perfect example of that. They had what, 7 red zone opportunities and they only scored once. Like, that's not a good sign. And the Bucs defense for the most part was relatively healthy that game. I know we didn't have Anton Winfield, obviously, didn't have Kalijah Cansey. So those are 2 big time players, but for the most part, you had your starting secondary out there. And then as you move forward through here, and we go into this game next week, that's why I said, like, there's no excuses for this defense not to improve or at least be better. I think tackling is obviously number one for the players. That's somewhere where they have to step up. But schematically wise, like, you can't have Anthony Nelson guarding Christian McCaffrey on a 3rd and 5 just
Oh my
because
God.
just because it's based on the scheme. You have to understand, and I think that's where Todd Bowles misses a lot of this. And this is probably one of the reasons why a lot of people are probably leaning towards him being moved on from, is because, well, for whatever reason, he just doesn't understand certain situations the right way. At least in my opinion, I think you would agree with this. Like, understanding, down in distance, 3rd down. Okay, this is an important stop we have to get. But he just continues to play his rotation, continues to play the scheme. And he's already shown that the scheme is not working. Like, they're moving the ball on you. Like, those are little things that become big things because he's afraid to not, I don't know if he's afraid, but just not willing to make the adjustments that are necessary.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the punt numbers here for you since the
Yeah.
first Falcons game. We have 1 punt in the first Falcons game.
Right.
We have 6 in the Saints game, but that was obviously probably outside of 1 corner the best the defense has played in that stretch. Baltimore only having 2, but keep in mind they pulled the starters on 1 of them at the very last drive of their offensive possession. So really, I think that's 1 punt for them. Falcons' second game at Tampa was 3 punts.
Yeah.
Kansas City 4, which I'll give the defense the credit there, except for the end, which I put more on Bulls than I do, again, the defense as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1 against the 49ers.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you're averaging probably 1.5 to 2 punts per game.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, not great. Not great. And especially when, over the last couple of games, the offense has had a, I guess, propensity to go 3 and out more often. And that's a credit to who they're facing. That's also without, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, a big chunk of your offense. And you're also, trying to manufacture big plays and yards with guys that Baker hasn't really played a ton with. So I think that has to, factor into that. But overall, going into next week, like, I think offensively, Liam Cohen and his staff are going to make minor adjustments on what they see and what can be improved. And I expect this offense to average 24 points per game in the second half of the season. Will that be enough for the Bucs to go 6-1 or 7-0 potentially? It should be.
If they go 6-1 or 7-0, Todd Bowles is keeping his job. We can stop the Cohen talk because I just don't see it. It should happen. Like, plus, you're the most optimistic person I know when it comes to Bucs related things.
Yeah.
Like, I want to believe you. It's just hard to see given what we've seen on the field and what we saw last year, what we saw the year before.
Yeah, I'll just ask you this. If this offense scores 24 points per game in the last 7 weeks, the Bucs, do you believe the Bucs should win most of those games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just pulling
because based on who you're playing, these are not good offenses that we're facing. They're not. Like when you
No, I
look at
mean,
the offense,
Panthers twice. We know that they're take out the Giants thing, which again was just like fluky and all that.
right?
Um, Again, the Panthers offense has been piss poor this year.
Yeah,
The Raiders don't have Devontae Adams, and they don't even know who the heck their quarterback is. They keep flip flopping
right.
between O'Connell and
Yeah,
Minshew, which again, I don't trust Bulls with someone. If they start Minshew against us,
mhm,
Minshew could have his Minshew game. He beat the
right,
Ravens this year. What makes you think that, like, again, there nothing's a cakewalk here. The
right,
Chargers are going to play this 1980s style football, and I think
mhm,
that plays into the Bucs' advantage.
right.
But again, it's in LA. It's no cakewalk.
Mhm,
Saints Panthers. I mean, like, you you have to go 5-2 at the bare minimum. I think you have to go 6-1 just to even compete for the season. Like as we've talked
yeah,
about, that 6-1 probably gets you the 7 seed,
yeah. Well,
pending tiebreakers.
I mean, I put it out there on Twitter, and this again is my positive thinking or positive talking, but I have a real belief that the Falcons could finish 9-8 because their
I
next
think they
three,
can.
yeah, their next three opponents, they got the Broncos on Sunday, which will be a big game. If they lose that one to the Broncos, then you have the Chargers, and then you have the Vikings after that. Those are two potential losses there. And then they also have Washington left. So there's potential to go 9-8.
And
It's definitely,
Washington, depending on this game
yeah.
tonight, might need that badly.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So, but like I asked you, if the Bucks offense scores 24 points per game,
You have to be 6-1.
you got to win those games. Like, and we're not asking our defense to be outstanding or elite. We
What
just
did
need
Warren
them.
Sapp said? Just give me 9.
Yeah, or yeah, just give them 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, 17 points per game. We're not asking the 2002 Bucks defense to show up.
No.
We just need this defense to be average and make the plays that are there, tackle and get some stops. And they should,
Opportunity.
yeah, they should be able to against these offenses that they're playing because Dallas, nope, Dak Prescott, their offense is in shambles. Carolina, New Orleans, Raiders, Carolina, again, New York, all these teams you should be able to beat if you score 24 or more. And there's potential we might score more than that because Mike Evans being back, we should be able to score probably closer to 27, 28 if all things are humming, especially with the offensive line, the way they're playing. I know Tristan Wirfs might miss next week's game with the MCL.
Shouldn't cause an issue. Justin
Yeah,
Schooley's been great and I'm
yeah,
Schooley's biggest critic. He's been solid against the run or
yeah,
run blocking.
yeah,
You should, granted, Dexter Lawrence is a beast.
yes,
Outside of him, you should be able to run on all of these teams, even the Chargers.
yeah,
I think you can run on them. They have that mentality, but they lack the talent.
yeah,
Um, the Panthers, you have to run on them, especially Derek Brown. The Raiders, you should run on them.
yeah.
The Cowboys, we'll see if Parsons is back by that point, but they also don't
Well, I
have
think
Dak.
I think he's back. I think
I
Parsons
think he's
been,
back by that point too, but they don't have Dak.
yeah. Well, I
So
think
that can mean
Parsons been,
changes.
yeah. I think Parsons been playing though. I believe. I thought he returned last week, if I'm not mistaken.
If he did, then
But
great, great, good for him.
yeah,
And maybe it's Lawrence that's not back yet.
yeah. Lawrence is out, but
Okay. But
yeah.
like
But
again, you
all
take
these
Dak
teams,
out of that game. Again, the Cowboys, if Dak's playing, I'm saying the offense has to come for that game. Dak's not playing though. I
yeah,
mean, like you can't afford to drop these games. And again, if Todd Bowles does, the Glazers have to have that conversation with Jason Light, and I don't
mm,
think it's an easy decision for any of them. But if I'm Jason Light, I also didn't bring on Todd Bowles. He was the
right.
legacy handoff. So like it's not like again, it's not his handpicked guy. His handpicked guy was Bruce Arians, and we know how that worked out.
Hmm.
So if his handpicked guy is Liam Cohen, which I think again is the only person it could be, and we might be again putting the cart before our horse here and talking about this a little too early,
Mm,
but like I think it's just you can't drop these. Again, 5-2 at the absolute worst.
hmm.
Like 5-2 is the minimum. Once you lose that third game, again, those talking points internally should be going because
Yeah.
I don't think you can get into the playoffs at 9-8. I don't think that.
No.
I mean, you have the two NFC East teams right now, and again, they're going to beat up on the Cowboys and Giants. Like,
Mm,
so like again, those records are going to look solid. I think the Bears have finally come back to life.
yeah.
But Minnesota and Green Bay aren't going anywhere. And then you have the 49ers who are on the come up. You could have, again, helped yourself. You had to win at least one of the Falcons games just for tiebreakers for the NFC South. So what did you say? You can foresee the Falcons going 9-8?
Yeah.
Well, the only way you can beat them is to go 10-7.
Mm-hmm.
So like you have to go win 6 games in order to do that. So like
Yeah.
you just gave yourself zero room for error, and that's just what's concerning is because it's not even just like give me 3 of those games. Just give me 1. And did you see someone posted the inverse of if you took every team and inverse the result of their one-score games?
I saw that.
The
We'd be
Chiefs would
7-3.
be 2-7, and the Bucs would be 7-2.
Yeah.
Just for reference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, it just shows you like how vital, in-game management is, how important making the right decisions, how to, knowing when to be aggressive and when not to. I think that's another thing that Todd Bowles has struggled with as a coach. We talked about it, a few weeks back with the, going for 2 or not going for 2. Just understanding your team better. I think that's where the big miss comes from Todd Bowles, unfortunately, and that's where the inconsistency comes with. I mean, yeah, I like a lot of things that Todd Bowles does as far as for a team perspective, and obviously the players like him. That's a big factor.
They play hard for him.
They do. They play hard for him. They're competitive. We're never out of a game. We're never typically blown out of a game, which is great to see. But also it comes to a fact where are you just going to continue to be on repeat, especially with this type of roster that Jason Light has put in front of you? Because last year, I know a lot of people say, hey, we were 4-7 last year and we won 5 of the last 6 games to make the playoffs. But now you're in a situation yet again, you got to do the same thing. You got to win 6 out of 7 to even have a shot at the playoffs. And can they do it? Absolutely. But we just don't know because of the inconsistent play that we've seen on one side of the ball. And then offensively, are they good enough to carry this team? I think they could, but obviously Baker is going to have to play near perfect, and that's a tall ask for him. And offensively, you're going to have to stay pretty much healthy the rest of the way and just go beast mode. Like you're going to have to, try to score 24 points in the first half and then try to, run out games or at least try to do it that way. But yeah, it's a tall task. But they have the schedule that favors it to get things done. But we will see. I mean, I'm with you as far as yeah, Todd Bowles is, and Mark's coming in here with the jokes as plus Wi-Fi. Yeah, absolutely. Like my Wi-Fi is definitely not consistent, but I admit to that. I admit to my mistakes. I admit to my errors. But yeah, I mean, it's gotta be better moving forward.
Yeah, he's not Lovie Smith, but remember when Lovie was struggling his last year here, and that one Falcons game against Julio, he was like, I tried 30 different coverages.
Yeah.
I don't think he did, just first off. So again, it might be just Lovie talking out of his butt. But at least throwing it on a whiteboard here, just take the words for what they are. It sounds like they're trying something. Whereas I feel like Bowles in general has tried to square peg round hole a lot of things for 5 years. And that just, again, Light's put together. I mean, again, this isn't the best roster in the NFL, but outside of the addition of Brady in 2020, when was the last time our whole team had this much talent?
Right.
Like, again, it's not, we've always had Mike and Chris for the past near decade, but like everywhere else is just so talented.
Yeah, I mean, excluding the the late '90s, early 2000s, that was
That's
obviously
what I mean. In the past, like since John Gruden left,
right?
Or really since John Gruden's second year after he axed everyone.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, excluding Hall of Famers that were on this team for, so long, but yeah, I mean, it's a well put together roster, a roster that continues to improve, should continue to get better as we get more cap space and a lot of things moving forward. Um, and back to what you were saying about Liam Cohen being probably the only option. I think he would obviously be the leading candidate, but I would like to see us still interview other
Oh, they're
guys.
going. You have
Yeah.
to Rooney Rule,
Yeah.
but I think like that's a nice thing about the Rooney Rule is then like you
Mhm.
have to necessarily interview a lot of people because then you don't know who's going to come through the door.
Right.
Um, and also, again, you never know. Hey, if Cohen doesn't work out, you want to have all of those faces in the building. So
Yeah.
again, it's like why do you, if you're not drafting in the top 5, why do you want to interview all those quarterbacks at the combine?
Mhm.
Because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when Trey Lance is going to fall off a cliff and can be had for a 5th-round pick. You
Mhm.
don't know when Anthony Richardson could tap. I still think that's so ridiculous. He tapped himself out of a play,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, he's 40-year-old Joe Flacco is the answer. Now they're flip flopping back to him, but again, Anthony Richardson's like a guy who could have been available, but you wouldn't, as a GM and organization, you wouldn't know unless you have that interview. So to your point, yeah, they're going to interview. You know how the Bucs are. They interviewed how many offensive coordinators for the position? Like
Mhm.
they're going to probably bring in 15 guys, at
Yeah.
least maybe 12, like 12 to 15, probably somewhere in there, are going to get their conversation. But again, it would be like you said, it would be Cohen's job to lose, and we might be putting the cart before the horse. Let's
Right.
lose a third game. Hope that doesn't happen. But if a third loss does happen, I think we just kind of have to mentally turn over to next season because we're talking really ridiculous scenarios that would have to occur
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us to even be 9-8 and
Yep.
make the playoffs. So really, again, let's have it play out. But I think it's something during the bye week. I don't think this should have been talked about a month ago.
Right.
But really now, I think is the time to be like, hey, like if I'm Liam Cohen, there's a real possibility that I could coach myself, if not the job for the Bucs,
Mhm.
but for somewhere else because Canales got, and people's going to say, oh, Canales got a job, Cohen's going to get a job. No, it's all about who you can bring with you.
Yeah.
What situation are you coming into?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, the right
like for instance,
situation.
like I don't think he should go to the Cowboys, but like if the Cowboys don't get Bill Belichick and I'm Liam Cohen, I have a quarterback in Dak Prescott. I have
Mm.
CeeDee Lamb. I have my defensive guy, whoever I bring in for, Micah Parsons. Like,
Mhm.
why wouldn't you want that?
Right.
Again, I don't think he would, but it's all about who offers you. And if you look at his resume, even compared to Canales' resume, Canales wasn't even getting real um, like interviews.
Mhm.
Canales didn't have a staff to bring with him. He plucked all of our bad staff to Carolina. We
Yeah.
had additions by subtractions by what he did, which I thank him for. But what Cohen has showed me is what differentiates him from Canales just taking out their experience. He knows and identify. He had the wide receivers coach leave Georgia. If
Mhm.
I'm that guy, why would I want? I forgot his name. I'm sorry.
No,
Why
it's
would I
okay.
want to leave? I have it made. I have the best recruits every year in the SEC, probably a fat paycheck.
Mhm.
Why would I jump to work with, okay, yeah, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, but like, why would I want to leave a cushy job when, not saying the Bucs cycle through head coaches because they don't,
Mhm.
but why would I want to take that opportunity when I have a cushy job? I think they like Cohen. I think they
Yeah.
believe in Cohen. And I think Cohen's done a really good job, really, a lot of these guys were college coaches.
Mhm.
He plucked them. So he has the relationships. I'm curious if he were to get a head coaching opportunity, whether the Bucs or somewhere else, who he would bring in for a defensive coordinator. It's not going to be Robert Saleh for a lot of people or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think he could. I don't think a Mike Vrabel would be a DC in general, but he would
Mhm.
definitely wouldn't be a DC for a first time head coach, especially an offensive guy like that. I could see him be like a DC for like Bill. Like
Mhm.
that's the only DC job I could see him taking. So I would cross him off. Like, then you got to look at does he work with a guy like Dennis Allen? Does he have a guy in college? Like, all those things are great, but we'll talk about that if there's a third loss. I just hope there isn't, because I want to play January, February football. If this team gets a playoff game, and I think even if the Lions are a 2 seed, if the Eagles are a 2 seed, if the Commanders are a 2 seed, like, I really like those. I don't like us against the 49ers. I don't like us against maybe even the Minnesota Vikings, just because I think Kevin O'Connell is just so good at scheming things up. Not because I don't think we can't stop Justin Jefferson or Aaron Jones or whatever. They lost Darisaw, but like, really, those are your contenders there. We've already beaten 2 of them this year.
Yep.
But 3 of them, sorry, the Lions. We just didn't beat the 49ers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you get in the playoffs, anything's possible. But like you and I have said, like, it just depends. Can they make this near perfect run that they're going to have to go on? 6 wins, I think, is the minimum to get into the postseason. That's what they're going to have to look at. Will it be enough? We'll just have to wait and see. But Mark brings up a good question here. He's like, who's going to step up on defense? He's suggesting Antoine Winfield, but he doesn't know where he's been. I think
he's just been hurt. Like, he's been a step slow. We know Zion's that dude right now. The only person who could regress on the defense is Zion. Everyone else has room to grow. So I really hope, again, the players do what they need to do, and I think the coaches really need to change up just their ideology in terms of at least their game planning.
Yeah. Because
they're not coming into games prepared. Teams are coming against us from the jump and just going pedal to the metal. Like, they already have their answers. There's not really any adjusting. I just think schematically there just needs to be hey, we got to figure out if further this one thing, or the players just have to play significantly better. Like, one of the two has to happen.
Yeah. I made and this is a good point here by Fukuwa, talking about JJ Russell or Vi Jones. I mean, hopefully we see, more dime packages, more, rotation at the linebacker position to get different looks. But I'm with you. I think it starts at the coaching staff and the ideology, the scheme. I think definitely needs to be honest, take a back seat. I think they need to just throw it out the window and really just focus on, okay, what can we do well? And what are we able to do well? And then just go from there. And
I think if they found something and just hey, if we do this and we only concede into the late teens, early 20s, if they stick to what they do well, even if they are in dime, it's really hard to run against Vita Vea, Yaya Diaby, even Joe Tryon-Sharinka. I trust them in that type of package versus just throwing out 2 linebackers. Just throw out 2 linebackers, because I'm sorry to that chatter. V Jones clearly isn't trusted. Whether he has talent or not, I can't really speak. I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I know V Jones tape like the back of my hand here. But I can tell you I know enough about JJ Russell, and JJ Russell got his opportunity. I just can't. If you're going to do the whole 2 linebacker thing, I think it kind of has to be KJ at this point. But to your point, why beat the dead horse? Try something new.
Yeah.
What worse? Again, what's the worst thing that comes from it? If you're a primary 4-1-6 defense, what is the worst that can come? What, give us 24 points a game? 24 is a lot better than what they've been giving up.
Yeah. I think you have to look at that. I think you have to look more into 5-1-5, 4-1-6 type of defenses, especially on first and second down. Your job as this
too many yards.
Yeah.
Too many yards on first down.
This defense, I think, really needs to hone in on, we got to make 3rd and long as much as possible. We got to make that happen often. And we might still not get off the field, but at least more opportunities, maybe give you a chance for a turnover. They got to get back to being aggressive up front on first and second down. Where is the tackle for loss plays? That's what they need. So a 5-1-5 defense, I think, is advantageous. I think you would go, 4-1-6, like you're talking about, especially 4-1-6 on 3rd down.
Yeah.
Maximize your coverage. Hell, I wouldn't be
a roamer fifth guy. Have 4 down, and you
Yeah.
just have no idea where JTS is.
Right.
He could be
Exactly.
in the middle. He could be on the left. He could be on the right. He could be a delayed blitzer. Like, he can just be something. But that's, again, like to your point, it's just better than what the current process is. We're not saying we have the answers here. We're also not paid defensive coordinators in the NFL.
Right.
We just know the talent level of what our current team is. We know what Bowles has tried in the past, and we know the limitations of certain players that have inhibited our success. So if you tie all that together, like, take what the offense is doing. This offense is not doing what it was doing in week 1.
Right.
It's not what it was doing in week 4. It's not what it was doing in week 7. They have evolutionary changed. Again, their ideologies, they're running so much outside zone and failing at it the first month of the season was kind of sickening to watch. But they beat it to a dead horse to the point that they got better at it and then mixed up the other things and found their identity of what they do well, which is a lot of gap. And then you saw the success go through the roof. And then, hey, you throw little sprinkles in there. We figured out that Bucky's the guy, so you're turning those, 3 yards a carry that Rashad's doing, and you're tacking on an extra 2 to 3 because Bucky's making guys miss at a level that is really, on par with the elite running backs in the NFL right now. So you're making up that difference with creativity, but you identified the better player to make it work. So again, to your point, 5-1-6 or 4-4-1-6, whatever the case may be. Again, I know Mike Edwards and Jordan Whitehead could play linebacker better than KJ Britt is right now. They're not linebackers, but we also saw what's his face, Ryan Smith last year.
Ryan Neal. Yeah.
Ryan Neal was a terrible safety.
Yeah, but better linebacker.
When he actually played linebacker, he did okay. Was he Levante David? No.
But
was he better than KJ Brink currently? Yes.
Yeah, he's respectable. So yeah, I mean, I think you look at that. That is definitely, I think that's one facet of the adjustments they need to make. Obviously, more dime package, more creativity on the defensive side. But also the second part of that is they got to understand certain situations within the game. Understand, okay, it's 3rd and 5. I got to make sure my best guys are out there on the field, and bringing it from a pass rush standpoint, having the right guys on the right receivers, identifying where the ball is going to pre-snap. And I don't think that's been happening, especially when you watch this defense. It seems like they're just lining up. We're going to play our assignment, like you said, and hope for the best. That's got to be different in this second half of the season. And if it doesn't happen, that could be the biggest reason why Todd Bowles is not here in 2025. And you're looking at a new head coach in Liam Cohen, because guess what? He's doing those things week in, week out. He's making the adjustments. He's playing to the matchups, playing to the opponent, and coming up with a plan that is going to work against said defense. The opposite on the other side of the ball is not happening right now. You're not putting your best players on the opposing offensive players. You're not attacking what you should be attacking and finding ways to win at the point of attack. So that was a lot said there, but I'm hoping this defense figures it out, because if they can just be average, like I said before, because I have a good feeling this offense is going to score 24 points per game with Mike Evans coming back. That's going to help your red zone. It's going to help everything else. K-Dot probably will get 12 catches a game because he'll be open.
Hey, fantasy tight end 1, K-Dot.
K-Dot, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, 20 points given up will be totally fine in this stretch. Like, the offense should be good enough.
Honestly, Todd Bowles may come out and not do one flying thing of anything that we just said. Right. And you know what? The process might be better, but the caveat there is it's against the lesser competition and the not as good coaches. I think that's the key. Yeah. John Harbaugh, his team's going to come in prepared, and they're not going to make many mistakes, and that quarterback's not making mistakes. Kyle Shanahan is one of the most creative minds in the NFL, and he has a quarterback who has his moments, but generally isn't prone to turning the ball over.
Yep.
You have Kirk Cousins, heaven forbid, is not prone to turn the ball over. He'd rather chuck it 2 yards on 4th and 8 than try to make a first down because that's just what Kirk Cousins does. So, like, again, you're playing against those risk-averse quarterbacks with decent rosters but really good coaches.
Mm.
You're playing less talented teams with not as good coaches. So the same process might be the same and might work, and we might just be wasting our breath on this podcast. And
Probably.
again, it might work.
Yeah.
But again, what stops then? Do you want what happened, in Brady's last year and you go into Dallas and you lose by 35 and you're just like, okay. Like, is that, again, to your point at the beginning of this process or to this podcast, is that the process each year? Is like that the expectation? Is just make it to the dance, lose in the first round, whether it be 3 points or 35, and just move on, move forward. Hey, we made the playoffs, pat yourself on the back. Like, no, I mean, again, I don't think Bruce Arians was risking for the biscuit as much as in Tampa as what, the book might say that he did. But at the end of the day, that was at least the expectation. And Todd Bowles might say the words, and I know the players love him. But what I'm seeing on the field, like, you can just take the Kansas City game. That wasn't a team that was playing to win a Super Bowl. That was a team to just playing to get by.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked with, my co-host Mark about this earlier today. I was like, what's your expectation moving forward for this team? And he talked about it's not winning games, it's winning championships. But at the same time, it's like, are we just going to be satisfied going 9-8 every year? Because that's what we're on pace to do under Todd Bowles every single year.
Didn't Dungy get fired for only going like 10-6 every fucking year? Like, I'm sorry.
Well, no, you're fine.
The context was different there, obviously.
Yeah,
but like,
it was different.
He was getting to the NFC Championship game and losing.
Yes,
that was the standard once upon. I'm not saying, again, we're not going to compare this to 99 or 02 or the teams in between, but that was the standard of which you fired your coach. Your Hall of Fame coach.
Right. Well, the biggest thing with Dungy was he just couldn't progress, and I think that's
what has Todd done progressive in the past? I think he's honestly gotten less creative, less progressive, less riskful than what he was even 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that'd be my argument.
No, and I'm with you there. It's like, are we just going to continue to stay status quo and continue to waste the years of this roster? Because you just signed Baker Mayfield to a 3-year contract. You're in a window of that said time to, maybe make a push for a potential NFC Championship or possibly a Super Bowl. And it just seems with, the lack of inconsistency on the coaching side of the team, it's holding this team back from having a greater chance of doing said things. And, that is something that we will find out over these next 7 games. It should be interesting. But with that said, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Appreciate everyone joining us in here. We had over 100 people, so that's awesome. Be sure to hit the like button. Comment down below your thoughts. If you had, something else you wanted to bring up, feel free to put it in the comments. But as always, I want to thank my good friend Ken for coming on. I know we were trying to do this on Buck What You Heard, but it was awesome to have it here on Real Bucs Talk as well. So, always a great time talking about this team, even though it can be super frustrating. But
it's the Bucs life, baby.
It is a Bucs life. So, Ken, I just want to say thank you. And definitely have to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Again, go Bucs, and let's beat them Giants.
All right, sounds good. Well, with that, hope everyone has a great weekend. Be sure to check out Cobra Kai. That comes out tomorrow. If you haven't watched The Penguin, be sure to watch that.
Oh, you need to watch The Penguin.
That's the best show of the year right now. Yellowstone is back, so if anybody's into Yellowstone, be sure to check that out. A lot of good content. If it's not just sports, there's a lot of good content on TV right now. So be sure to check out all those shows. And as always, hit that like button. And with that said, until the next one.